Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this Tuesday edition of Crime Unveiled with Courtney Bennett. I am joined now by Jeffrey Schwartz, who is a former judge. Jeffrey, thank you so much for joining me tonight.
My pleasure to be with you, Courtney. Thank you for asking me.
So we wanted to talk about President-elect Donald Trump's the court cases, what we've seen in the media these last few weeks. What's your insight? What can you tell us tonight?
Okay, I'm going to talk to you like I was the judge that is handling many of these situations and try to preface what I say with that elected judges in particular have no constituency. Even though they're elected by the people, their constituency is the law. And that's because they're supposed to be fair to everybody, and the law is supposed to apply that way. So let's start with the most recent things that are happening. That's with Judge Marchand and the 34 count conviction on the cover up of the payoff to Stormy Daniels and others. The judge today continued his decision for 1 week to allow President-elect Trump's lawyers to argue why they should not proceed because he's president-elect of the United States. First thing I'll state to you is that a president-elect of the United States is not a constitutional officer. It is a person who's going to become a constitutional officer, but does not carry the rights and privileges of holding the office. We only have one president at a time, and at this moment, it is Joe Biden. It is not Donald Trump. So as a result of which, he is a civilian at this point. He is arguing that the case against him should be, one, either dismissed because of the immunity case, or two, that the conviction should be reversed because certain evidence came in that he claims falls under immunity. I'm going to say that there's nothing in the testimony that was presented in that case that falls under the immunity case, which requires either, one, that it be his constitutional duties, his core duties, that none of the testimony involved that. Either that or duties that he performs as president of the United States, and nothing involving that was testified to. If it's his private business, the testimony doesn't fall under the immunity case. And so therefore, it's my belief that Judge Marchand should deny the motion either to dismiss and or set aside the verdict. The second thing that has to happen is whether he's going to be sentenced. We all know that he's not going to go to jail. Even if he's sentenced to jail, he still has an appeal right, and he would get a supersedious or a bond staying his sentence. So as a result of which, he wouldn't be going to jail till after he finishes the presidency, and he's 82 or 83 years old. Not likely he would serve a sentence. But I believe that Judge Marchand has to look at it that the law requires that he sentence someone convicted of a felony. And that sentence appropriately could be the maximum fine for all 34 counts, and possibly what we call credit for time served, the 1 day that he served when he was surrendered. That would suffice for these purposes. I don't think that he should be in any way given anything other than that. I think that we have two people who have gone to jail in this scheme. He is the person they did those things for. And the fact that he wouldn't go to jail, but they do, is disproportionate to begin with. And his sentence should be proportionate, but we don't have that available to us. That handles that case. As far as his two cases in federal court are concerned, those cases are going to go away. They're not going to go to trial before he becomes president. They couldn't try him while he's president. He's going to control the Department of Justice, and his attorney general is going to fire Jack Smith and then order a dismissal of those cases. They are going to go away. That is the election interference case and the classified documents case. The only remaining case is the one, at least criminally, in Georgia. He's not going to be forced to go to trial on that case, although I think all of his co-defendants, including Mark Meadows, who lost his last appeal to the Supreme Court to prevent it from going to trial in state court, so he could try. He wanted to go to federal court so he could get a pardon, but Donald Trump can't pardon anybody from a state offense. So as a result of which, that case eventually, assuming the prosecutor on the case is not thrown off the case, should go to trial sometime during 2025. That's what I think is going to happen there. On the civil cases, That is the case in which the Attorney General of New York got a $400 million judgment. That judgment should be executed upon and tried to be satisfied with the assets that belong to Mr. Trump after his appeal is over, if the verdict is upheld or if the amount of the penalty is upheld, but that will be exercised against. E. Jean Carroll has every right to proceed to collect on her judgments, which actually total $90 million, simply because he was civilly sued. And even a president of the United States can be sued in a civil court and required to defend him or herself. So therefore, those judgments will be executed upon. And that's really the status of all the cases that are pending against Mr. Trump at this time.
When it comes to sentencing, the one that we're looking at right now in New York, could the sentencing be delayed until after his presidency is over?
No, because that case would then be stayed and not allowed to proceed. And on top of which, he's already been convicted. And by continuing that case till after January 20th is another way of technically dismissing it, because he would be convicted, but he wouldn't be sentenced. So the case would still be pending. Okay. To the same extent, if they wait until then, he wouldn't be able to prosecute an appeal in the appellate court. So he would remain a convicted felon. What Mr. Trump doesn't want is to walk into a court, have a judge look down on him, and issue punishment for the whole world to see, even after he has been elected president of the United States, but before he's taken office. It's a matter of optics for him. It really isn't going to make a difference in his life one way or the other.
You talked a little bit about how the judges, they're elected into these positions, but they don't necessarily answer to the public. They have to answer to the law. I mean, there's laws out there that bind them to certain things, and they have to cite that case law.
For example, when someone runs for a position as a judge, they're not allowed to talk about what they would do if a certain case was in front of them. They're required to just answer a question like that. I will follow the law. That's my job, to enforce and follow the law. And that's what I promise you I will do. That's all the people should be expecting from their judges. And to expect them to rule in certain ways makes them partisan politicians. Judges shouldn't be partisan politicians. They answer to the public when they come up for re-election. That's true. And the public can say, we don't think you're a very good judge, so we're going to not vote for you. That's their choice. But they shouldn't expect judges to answer to them to get their votes.
When it comes to, this is the first time in the history of the United States that a convicted felon has been elected president-elect. Does that make a difference? Does that change things here?
Well, it obviously didn't for the election. Is it going to change things before January 20th? No. He's going to be sworn in as president of the United States. By sentencing Mr. Trump, he goes in not only as a convicted felon, but a convicted felon under sentence. And that's a little bit different. Once he is sentenced, he's not eligible to vote in the state of Florida unless or until his sentence is completed and the pardons board grants him a return of his civil rights. Otherwise, he can serve as president, but he couldn't serve as an elected officer in the state of Florida, and he can't even vote.
When it comes to that sentencing, you talked a little bit about not doing any time in jail or prison. Right. What does the sentencing look like then? Does it look like a fine? So once you pay off the fine, then you've completed your sentence? You
pay off your fine. If he sentences him to some jail time, but says, I'm going to stay until you complete your time as president, then the sentence would not be completed. And therefore, he would not be eligible to have his rights given back to him because he still has a sentence to serve. I don't think that's likely to happen, though.
You don't think that it's likely for him to go to jail or prison?
No, I don't think so. I think if he had not been elected, there's a real possibility, and I think proportionately, he would have received at least if I were the judge, he would have received a proportionate sentence to the people who have already done time for doing his bidding and carrying out the cover-up. And so as far as I'm concerned, he should get 2.5 years, but it isn't going to happen.
Why do you think that we're seeing a delay in this case in particular?
I think that Judge Merchan is trying to give the defendant, this case, Mr. Trump, the opportunity to make as good a record as he possibly can to go up on an appeal. I think that Judge Merchan, if he is being true to the way he has been before, is going to deny the motion to dismiss or to set aside, and he's going to deny the motion for a new trial. And I think he is going to deny the motion to continue the sentencing any further. And I think he's going to do what he knows he has to do. To me, being a judge in a big case, I guess the best way to liken it is when you get a big case like this, you have to feel like Michael Jordan. With 5 seconds left in the game, you want the ball. If you don't want the ball in a case like this, you don't belong on the bench.
Well, as we wrap things up here, is there anything else that you would like to talk about that we didn't?
No, I think we got it all in, at least as far as Mr. Trump is concerned. There are going to be other things to talk about involving the remaining case in Georgia and what happens afterwards. But right now, it's time to sit back and see what Judge Merchan is going to do with this case and whether the state of New York and Miss Carroll go forward and collect the money that's due to them. It's almost $500 million.
Professor Schwartz, thank you so much, as always, for providing great insights into this. We really appreciate it.
It's been my pleasure, Courtney. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Yeah, okay, you too.
Thanks. Well, thank you all for joining us for Crime Unveiled with Courtney Bennett on this Tuesday night. Join us next week for another all-new episode here at the Digital Desk at Mid-Michigan Now. I hope that you enjoy the rest of your evening.